and I'm going to reference the comment in 2008 of the Treasury Board President at the time, Vic Taves, who, after you concluded your work with the UNHCR, called you, and I'm quoting from his words in the House of Commons, disgusting.
Today, Mark Carney appointed the new Governor General, Louise Arbour, and it may have been one of the most awkward opening press conferences of anyone's political career. Let's take a look. Louise Arbour named Canada's next Governor General. Louise Arbour, a former Supreme Court of Canada justice who later served as a United Nations commissioner and prosecuted war crimes in the former Yugoslavia and Rwanda, has been named Canada's new Governor General. Quote, "Canada is a wonderful country, shaped by its diversity of people, of perspectives and experiences, but I think shaped also mostly by a common respect for strong public institutions and for the rule of law," end quote, Miss Arbour said Tuesday. Miss Arbour, 79, was born in Montreal. She taught at Osgoode Hall Law School and first became a judge in Ontario in the late 1980s. She was a justice on the Supreme Court from 1999 until 2004. After retiring from the High Court, Ms. Arbour worked as the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. Later, she was a special representative of the UN Secretary General for International Migration, working on global migration policy. She was the chief prosecutor in 2 UN international criminal tribunals which investigated war crimes in the former Yugoslavia and in Rwanda. This led to the indictment of Serbian President Slobodan Milosevic, the first such legal action against a sitting head of state by an international tribunal. Starting in April 2021, Ms. Arbour led an independent review of Canada's Department of National Defence and the Armed Forces. In a report issued in May 2022, she recommended reforms to address sexual misconduct and institutional culture. Mr. Carney said Ms. Arbour's career speaks to the approach she will bring to Rideau Hall, the official residence of the Governor General. All right, so, ladies and gentlemen, Louise Arbour. She has a resume, that's for sure. She's been a Supreme Court judge. She served as the UN High Commissioner. Governor General seems like kind of a step down for her, but, you know, she is 79 and probably wants something to wind down on, and the Governor General's position is not exactly a high-stress type of a job. You're not having to preside over courts, you're not assigning guilt, and you're not executing sentences or recommending sentences. So, what's the big deal about this? Well, mostly not. The Governor General's position isn't something where she's going to be having a great deal of responsibility. Yeah, she's a diplomat and has to go around and greet people and present the Order of Canada, do what the Prime Minister asks of her, that sort of thing. But it's not like she's going to be making big decisions that are going to be impacting all of Canada or even the average Canadian citizen. But it is important to understand who this person is, because they can have a bit of they can have an impact on the Canadian taxpayer.
Good morning, Madame Arbour, Prime Minister Ashley Burke, CBC News. There's an expense program for former governors generals that allows them to claim up more than $200,000 a year, and that's on top of their expenses. And the reimbursements last year totaled more than $550,000. A Privy Council report in 2019 said there wasn't enough transparency around this, that Canadians should know exactly how that money is being spent and by who, and it called for more transparent public reporting. Do you think this program should continue? And if so, will you commit to ensuring that there is more, the details about how this money is spent and by who will be made public?
Well, thank you very much for that question. I'm not familiar with the details that you're quoting. I'll look into it, ensure that, as you say, that there's adequate transparency around the expenses. I'll just observe that the Governor Generals have served our country with distinction, and in the cases in their post time after being Governor General, continue to serve Canadians through their charitable and other foundation activities, for which I'm personally grateful, and I think all Canadians are as well. Thank you.
So, we're talking about the expenses of the Governor General. Mark Carney says that, well, you know, past governor generals have served with distinction. Really? All of them? All of them? Because there's one in particular that got a lot of attention, and it wasn't the good kind. This is a parliamentary report that was actually done. Following Her Excellency, the Right Honourable Mary Simon's official working visit to the Middle East from the 17th to the 23rd of March 2022, a House of Commons sessional paper revealed that the cost of catering services for related flights was over $80,000. This is just last fall. Governor General must stop billing taxpayers for clothes. The Canadian Taxpayers Federation is calling on the federal government to end the Governor General's $130,000 clothing allowance following the release of government documents showing Mary Simon billed taxpayers thousands for shoes and clothing. Quote, Simon makes a $378,000 salary from taxpayers. She can pay for her own clothes, end quote, said Franco Terrazzano, CTF Federal Director. And you can actually see some of the items that they're talking about here. Simon billed taxpayers $7,576 for clothing between January 25th, 2024 and March 4th, 2025, according to the federal government documents released in response to an order paper question. Simon's clothing expenses include, but not limited to, around $2,500 on luxury wool suits, $1,500 on a sealskin chest piece, but $1,100 on 6 pairs of shoes, $875 on a blazer, $495 on a dress, $475 on a coat, $330 on 2 silk camisoles, $130 on a top. Governor General spends $117,000 on dry cleaning. This was back in October of 2023. Canada's Governor General and Rideau Hall have racked up a 6-figure dry cleaning tab in recent years, according to records obtained by the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. The Office of the Secretary of the Governor General dropped $117,566 on professional dry cleaning services since 2018, despite having in-house staff on the payroll responsible for doing the laundry. Quote, when I spill half the Pizza Hut lunch buffet on my white work shirt, I don't stick the company I work for with the dry cleaning bill, and neither should the Governor General, end quote, said Franco Terrazzano, CTF Federal Director. Governor General spent $3 million in travel during her first full year in office. The costs were split between 4 overseas trips and 17 flights within Canada. So, ladies and gentlemen, Mary Simon seemed to have a real fun time being Governor General in Canada. And those dry cleaning bills, they didn't include all that new stuff she bought, right? Like, in virtually every other business, you don't get to claim buying suits and dresses and pocket watches and anything else that you're looking to buy. You don't get to claim that as a business expense. To the Canadian Taxpayers Federation's point, why are we letting the Governor General, who makes $378,000 a year, why are we letting them have a clothing allowance? Why are we letting them expense dry cleaning bills? If the staff is not doing their job, doing the laundry, then you get new staff. That's how this is supposed to work. So this is where this question came from. So hopefully, we actually have somebody that comes in here that doesn't have, the hole in her pocket like Mary Simon did, and we actually get to see expenses go down for the Canadian taxpayer. But there was another interesting question that she was asked next.
I would like to ask, your resume was awfully impressive, and the Prime Minister certainly finds it impressive. And yet at times there have been political parties in this country who've taken issue with your work. And I'm going to reference the comment in 2008 of the Treasury Board President at the time, Vic Taves, who, after you concluded your work with the UNHCR, called you, and I'm quoting from his words in the House of Commons, disgusting. And just yesterday, a senior aide to former Prime Minister Harper, Howard Anglin, also former Chief of Staff to Jason Kenney, tweeted out, anybody but Arbour. So there's a point here, is there's conservatives in this country who took issue with you as a, quote, judicial activist and so on, and human rights. And I wondered how you might bridge or seek to make bridges with conservatives who might not be so happy with your appointment. And I think you were probably, Prime Minister, you were probably at the Bank of Canada at the time. I wonder if you'd taken notice of Mr. Tave's comments and what you think about Conservatives who didn't seem to have much respect for Ms. Arbour's work at the UNHCR. Madame?
Well, I can tell you that, as I said before, we live in a country where there's a great free space for expression of contrary views, even at times expressed in very robust fashion, and I have immense respect for that process. I will reach out not only to those who agree with me. The kind of cheerleading mode, I think, is not always conducive to change and to progress. I will reach out to anybody who wishes to engage with me, to debate, to discuss. I will listen, and I hope in due course that I will manage to persuade those, particularly those who may doubt my integrity, that I'm not sure I could do much more to try to persuade them otherwise on the basis of what I've done before. But going forward, I will engage.
Thank you. So first off, I want to say that I really like that answer, right? She said, listen, free speech is free speech, and this is something that people should be able to have in this country. It's actually nice to hear a Liberal say that for a change. She said, listen, it's my job to change people's mind. That's actually a really, really good answer. Because it doesn't demonize the people that have had the opinion. You know, they may feel like they're justified for having the opinion. But if she's going to be in this position, she's going to be in a very high-profile public position. I respect her for actually saying, I will reach out. Hopefully she actually acts on her word and does reach out to the people that she knows have been critical of her. Now, we were actually able to find the original clip from this. If you've seen Brian Lilly's video on the Governor General today, you'll see an abbreviated portion of this. But here's the full clip and kind of the context behind where this question actually came from.
Order.
And I would suggest to the members opposite that my concern is actually no laughing matter. When I was referring in my question to Louise Arbour, the President of the Treasury Board very loudly yelled out, "She's a disgrace." And I would ask if the member opposite would in fact do the dignified thing and withdraw his comments.
The Honourable the President of the Treasury Board.
Very much. And this gives me an opportunity to clarify my comments. In fact, the comments that Louise Arbour has made in respect of the State of Israel and the people of Israel are in fact a disgrace. And that is, I stand by those words.
So, this was way back in 2008, and this was during the Stephen Harper minority government. Now, what they were referring to is when Louise Arbour was working over at the UN, she was very critical of Israel in the conflict back in those days, you know, with Hezbollah and Lebanon, and had essentially blamed Israel for causing the most damage, I guess it was. And, you know, you can take from that what you will. That was a completely different contextual time than now. I can't say I'm an expert on it, so I'm not going to comment on that. But this is where the actual original comments that the Global News Reporter was saying. But what I don't like is that the Global News Reporter was seemingly trying to build this narrative that because two guys that have no connection to the existing government and the existing opposition, but because they were conservatives, they're trying to say, so, you know, conservatives seem to have a problem with this. Trying to associate this with the Poilievre opposition. And I think that is disgraceful reporting. I really do. Until you actually hear anyone in the existing opposition or strongly associated with that existing opposition, you need to treat this as separate guys. in my humble opinion. This is just an attempt at the media to try to say that Conservatives are trying to taint and smear and embarrass the newly appointed Governor General. And I think that's absolutely a disgrace. So this is where, I will say I'm willing to give her the benefit of the doubt. But she is a liberal. She absolutely is a liberal. Make no mistake about that. She leans left. She's acted left. She's ruled left. She's donated left. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is back in 2006, and you can actually see that Louise Arbour donated $1,000 to the Liberal Party of Canada. Now, this is the only time that we find any records of her donating to the Liberal Party of Canada. So I won't say that, because of her donations, she has been appointed. I don't think there's anything there. But what it does say is that she was at least passionate enough back then to donate $1,000 to the Liberal Party, and her views and her activism and everything in between, that has been leaning to the left. I don't think that's what you need right now. And Brian Lilly makes a very good case on his video about why you should not have somebody who is visually partisan when it comes to the Governor General position. But let's see how she does. I don't think there's anything really scandalous to really taint this appointment as of yet. And I think that we need to, if we're going to practice what we preach, let's see how she does. If she is seen and not heard, if we don't hear about any outrageous expenses, if we don't hear about any outrageous scandals, and she just does her job, represents Canada, welcomes diplomats, and we don't hear tickety-boo from her, other than, it seems like she's doing a pretty good job, then she's done her job. There's a separate debate on whether we actually need a Governor General. There's a separate debate on the powers of the Governor General. But since this is where we are, I think it's reasonable to just take a wait-and-see approach and see how she does.